My name is Isabella Kessler. I'm 27 years old, and if you asked my father when things went wrong between us, he'd probably say it started with a joke. That's how he always framed it. Just a joke, like humor could disinfect cruelty if everyone laughed loudly enough afterward. I work in logistics, which is a polite way of saying I fix problems nobody wants to admit they caused. Spreadsheets, deadlines, quiet solutions. I've always been good at that, staying invisible while keeping things running. People think that means I'm shy. I'm not. I just learned early that speaking up didn't change outcomes. It only made things louder. Growing up, my father, Ron Kessler, was a performer. Loud voice, big gestures, jokes that demanded attention. At family gatherings, he'd hold court like a stand-up comic who never left the stage. The punchlines were usually about me or my mother or anyone who didn't laugh fast enough to protect themselves. I learned how to laugh on cue. It became a reflex. Smile, nod, don't flinch. My mother died when I was 19. Cancer. Fast. Ruthless. After that, the house felt hollow, like all the sound bounced back sharper. Whatever softness she'd provided, whatever restraint disappeared with her. My father didn't know how to grieve without an audience. Vulnerability made him uncomfortable, so he turned it into material. I moved out at 21. A small apartment. A lock that was mine. Distance, but not escape. We still did holidays, birthdays, the occasional forced dinner. The script never changed. I was still too sensitive, too stiff, too boring. Last month, my cousin Emma got engaged. My uncle hosted a dinner to celebrate. I almost didn't go. Work had drained me, and I could already feel the familiar tension coiling in my chest. But guilt is persuasive. I put on a clean blouse, bought wine, even picked up flowers for Emma's fiancé, a man I'd never met. The moment I walked in, my father's voice cut through the room. "Look who it is." A grin, applause from a few relatives. I smiled automatically, hugged Emma, and drifted toward the edges like I always did. Dinner passed. Small talk. Plates cleared. Dessert arranged. I helped without being asked. I always helped. Keeping things smooth was my specialty. Then Emma opened gifts in the living room. Someone handed her mine, a photo album, custom-made blank pages waiting to be filled. Her name and her fiancé's engraved on the cover. She teared up, said it was thoughtful. For a moment, I felt something close to pride. That's when my father cleared his throat. "You know," he said, glass raised. "Isabella's always been the thoughtful one." A few uneasy laughs. Thoughtful with her gifts, thoughtful with her silences, thoughtful with her disappointments. The room shifted. I felt it in my chest. He kept going. "She's the kind of girl who triple checks her budget before buying socks. God forbid she ever throws a party, she'd go bankrupt." Laughter grew louder. I stared at him, waiting for the moment it would stop. It didn't. He looked directly at me, glass still raised. "To my daughter," he said, smiling, "you're nothing but a disappointment. But at least you're a polite one." People laughed. Not cruelly, not loudly, just enough. Enough to make the air thin. Enough to make me 10 years old again, standing by a grill while he mocked the way I cried during a movie and everyone pretended it was harmless. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I nodded at Emma, stepped outside, and drove home with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. That night, I didn't pack bags. Photos off the walls, documents gathered, accounts closed, number changed, email deleted. I didn't tell anyone. I wasn't angry. I was done. And I thought that would be the end. I was wrong. The morning after I erased myself, I went to work like nothing had happened. That's the part people never expect, how ordinary survival looks when you finally decided to stop explaining yourself. I brushed my hair, wore a neutral blouse, drank my coffee slowly. Inside, everything felt muted, like someone had wrapped my emotions in thick fabric and turned the volume down. I didn't tell anyone what I'd done. Not my coworkers, not my cousin, not the handful of friends who still texted occasionally. Silence wasn't a statement. It was maintenance. For 2 weeks, I poured myself into work. Long hours, back-to-back meetings. I solved problems before they became visible. My manager commented on how focused I seemed. I smiled and said I'd eliminated distractions. I didn't mention that distractions included my entire family. I moved apartments across town. Bigger windows, clean walls, no inherited furniture, no objects with history clinging to them. I switched gyms, opened a new bank account. Asked HR not to forward anything to my old email. Every tie cut clean. I didn't feel brave. I felt hollow. People think leaving means slamming doors, screaming burning bridges. For me, it felt more like quietly setting something down after carrying it too long. The weight disappeared before the pain did. Then, exactly 2 weeks later, my father showed up at my job. It was a Tuesday. I remember because my calendar was stacked meetings, I couldn't reschedule deadlines. I couldn't dodge. I was walking back from the break room with a coffee when I saw him through the glass doors at reception. At first, I didn't recognize him. He looked smaller, his shoulders hunched, his face puffy eyes rimmed red. There was a frantic energy about him, like someone dropped into a world without instructions. Then I saw his hands gripping the counter. My stomach dropped. I ducked behind a frosted glass partition and listened. "I'm looking for Isabella," he said. "She works here. She's my daughter." The receptionist, Jordan, hesitated. "Sir, if you don't have an appointment or a badge, I can't let you pass the desk." "Please," my father said. His voice cracked. "Just tell her I'm here. She won't answer me. I've tried everything." I froze. I'd never heard that sound from him before. Not at my mother's funeral. Not ever. Jordan shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step outside or I'll need to call security." "I already did," my father whispered. I stood there hidden, listening to the man who'd never apologized to me plead in front of a stranger half his age. And I didn't move. For the first time in my life, the roles were reversed. He was the one waiting. I was the one deciding. I didn't get the chance to decide. The security guard stepped in Mark, mid-50s, calm, ex-military posture. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Sir," he said evenly, "I'm going to ask you to leave the premises." "I just want to talk to her," my father said. "Is that illegal now?" "No one said anything about illegal," Mark replied. "But if you refuse to leave, we will involve law enforcement." Something changed in my father's face. The panic drained away, replaced by resentment. His eyes scanned the space like he knew I was watching. "Tell her she's overreacting," he muttered. "Tell her this is insane. All this over a joke." Mark didn't respond. My father straightened, voice louder now. "Fine. Treat me like a stranger. But when she needs help someday, when she realizes what she threw away, don't let her come crying to me." Then he left. Not loudly, not theatrically. Defeated. I stayed hidden until the doors closed behind him. My coffee had gone cold in my hands. Jordan glanced down the hallway, saw me, and gave a small nod. He didn't ask questions. He didn't push. That night, I sat on the floor of my new apartment, surrounded by unopened boxes, staring at blank walls. I should have felt relief, guilt, something. Instead, there was just this strange quiet inside me, like the storm had passed, but the power hadn't come back on yet. Growing up, I thought love meant proximity, showing up, enduring, absorbing. But behind that glass wall, listening to my father beg, I realized something that changed everything. Distance doesn't kill love. Disrespect does. The first message came from Emma. It was a voicemail, soft and careful, like she was afraid to step on something fragile. "Hey, Isabella. I didn't know he was going to do that at dinner. I swear. I'm really sorry. He's been trying to reach you. He's not doing great. Maybe you could just talk to him once." I listened to it twice. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to understand how easily pain gets reframed as obligation. Just talk to him. As if my silence was cruelty, and his humiliation of me was an accident. I didn't respond. A day later, my uncle tried. "You're being a little harsh, don't you think?" he said over the phone. "He's old school. That's just how he is." That phrase again. That's just how he is, like permanence excuses harm. Then came a text from my father's girlfriend, a woman I'd met exactly twice. "I know Ron can be rough around the edges," she wrote, "but he really loves you. He's heartbroken. He's not eating. Please don't do this to him. Do this to him." I stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. For decades, I'd been the one absorbing the impact so he wouldn't feel embarrassed, so he wouldn't feel small, and now suddenly my absence was violence. I still didn't respond. What finally cracked the quiet wasn't a call or a message. It was a delivery. I came home late one evening and found a thick manila envelope wedged into my mailbox. No postage, no return address. Inside were old photos. Me and my father at birthday parties, at the beach, my high school graduation. He'd circled certain ones in red ink, like he was building an emotional case against me, evidence of something I supposedly owed him. At the bottom was a note, 4 words. "You'll regret this silence." No signature, no explanation. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of my bed holding that paper, feeling something shift inside me. Not fear, not sadness. Resolve. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting. I wasn't trying to smooth things over or explain myself or manage his emotions. He was scrambling. And without someone to mock, control, or jab at for an audience, he didn't know who he was. Men like my father don't panic quietly. They escalate. At first, it was background noise. My old neighbor from back home left a voicemail. Your dad said you're going through something, she said. I hope you're okay, sweetheart. He's worried sick. A guy from my old gym texted asking if everything was all right between me and Big Ron. Then my LinkedIn inbox started filling up. A former intern colleague. Your dad mentioned you were looking for new work. Someone from college I hadn't spoken to in years. Heard things were rough at home, sending good vibes. At first I tried to rationalize it. Small town echo chambers. Gossip. Then Sam from marketing pulled me aside during lunch. Hey, weird question, he said quietly. Do you know someone named Ron Kessler? My stomach dropped. He called last week, Sam continued. Said he was your father. Wanted to confirm your employment status. HR shut it down, but it was strange. He'd called my job. Not to apologize, not to respect boundaries. To control the story. That night I called a lawyer. Not for court, not for revenge, for advice. Her name was Maya. Calm voice. Sharp mind. She didn't interrupt or minimize. When I finished, she said something I didn't realize I needed to hear. Isabella, you don't need to justify your silence. You're allowed to have peace. She explained my options. Documentation. Cease and desist letters. Protective orders. Power quietly laid out. Days passed. The messages slowed, but the pressure didn't. One morning I noticed a blue sedan parked across from my apartment. Engine running. Driver scrolling on his phone. The next day, same car, different time. I took photos. Sent them to Maya. Log everything she said, just in case. Fear crept in slowly like cold under a door. I started locking my door twice, looking over my shoulder, changing routines. But I still didn't reach out, because this wasn't remorse. It was panic, and panic doesn't stop when it isn't answered. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Not an email, not a voicemail filtered through someone else's concern. A physical envelope in my mailbox, addressed in thick, uneven block letters. My new address, an address I hadn't given to anyone. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at it like it might bite me. My name looked wrong in his handwriting, like something stolen. I carried it upstairs without opening it, set it on the counter, washed my hands, then sat down and stared at it again. When I finally tore it open, there was no greeting, no apology. Just ink pressed hard enough to leave grooves in the paper. You are embarrassing yourself. No one thinks you're strong for doing this. They think you're petty, fragile. I gave you everything. I made you who you are. If you're too blind to see that maybe you don't deserve to carry my name, fix this before it's too late. I read it twice, then a third time slower. That last line wasn't a plea. It was a threat. Something inside me hardened. The fear I'd been carrying, the quiet vigilance, the second guessing burned off, leaving clarity behind. This wasn't about reconciliation. It never had been. It was about control. I barely slept that night. By morning, I'd made my decision. I took a personal day and drove straight to Maya's office with everything the letter sealed. In a clear sleeve, screenshots of messages, voicemails, photos of the blue sedan, timestamps carefully written in the margins. She read through the folder without speaking. When she finished, she leaned back and said, "We're filing a restraining order today." I nodded. What I felt wasn't fear. It was relief. Within 72 hours, a judge granted a temporary protective order. No contact. No third parties. No showing up at my home or workplace. 500 feet. Any violation meant immediate consequences. The order was served the next day. That evening, the street outside my apartment was empty. No blue sedan, no idling engine, no shadows. Real silence. Not the kind that echoes, the kind that heals. I wanted to believe it would end there. It didn't. A week later, I was walking to my car after work when I noticed a man across the street, hoodie, sunglasses, standing too still. My chest tightened, but my hands didn't shake. I took a photo, sent it to Maya, called the non-emergency police line. They found him 20 minutes later, circling the block in the same blue sedan. He didn't resist, didn't argue. They arrested him for violating the order. I didn't go to the station. I didn't take his calls. I didn't show up to the hearing. I didn't need to. The system spoke for me. He was fined. The restraining order was extended. The warning was clear. Next time meant jail. After that, he vanished. No letters, no calls, no intermediaries, no watching cars. Silence finally on my terms. The silence didn't feel real at first. For weeks after his arrest, I kept waiting for something to happen, a knock at the door. A message slipping through someone else's phone, a familiar name lighting up my screen. My body stayed braced muscles tight like I was still expecting impact. But nothing came. Days passed, then weeks. The blue sedan never returned. No concerned friends reached out on his behalf. No envelopes appeared in my mailbox. The quiet settled in slowly, cautiously, like an animal unsure whether it was safe to stay. And then one morning I realized I'd slept through the night. No dreams, no jolting awake, no rehearsing conversations that would never happen. That was when I knew it was over. I started therapy not because I was falling apart, but because I finally had room to put things down. The therapist didn't ask me why I hadn't forgiven my father. She asked me how long I'd been carrying the responsibility for his emotions. The answer surprised me. As long as I can remember, I started doing small things for myself, reading again, journaling, taking walks without headphones. I booked a solo trip to Oregon on a whim and stood on a cliffside watching the ocean crash below, realizing I was breathing without flinching. Family ties thinned naturally after that. Some people drifted away quietly. The ones who'd told me I was being dramatic, that I'd misunderstood that he meant well. They stopped calling when they realized I wasn't going to be guilted back into place. Others stayed silent. And silence, I learned, is also an answer. Almost a year later, I got a message from Emma. Just one line. I get it now, I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time before locking my phone and setting it aside. I didn't respond not out of anger, but because I didn't need to. Healing, I learned, isn't about receiving an apology. It's about no longer waiting for one. People love to talk about forgiveness like it's a moral requirement, like it's the only way to find peace. But peace doesn't always come from absolving someone who never changed. Sometimes peace comes from distance, from boundaries that stay closed, from realizing you're allowed to stop being the emotional anchor for someone who keeps trying to drag you under. My name is Isabella Kessler. I'm 28 years old now, and I am not a disappointment. I'm done pretending I ever was.